Imagine you're a being with a life spanning roughly 4.6 billion years. You are Earth, cradleless lives that depend on you, your existence. What kind of grand and turbulent tapestry would it weave when you first awoke? Your eyes beheld a chaotic revelry. Billions of years ago, you were caught in a frenzied collision, screaming, weeping. You were a first-hand witness to this cosmic catastrophe. That wickedly grinning figure in the center? That's the sun. At this moment, it's still a newborn infant. Congratulations, you are Earth, 4.5 billion years ago, a scarred and battered planet just beginning to sculpt itself. Your arduous journey kicked off at this very moment. For the next 60 million years, fate was far from kind. Rocky debris rained down on you relentlessly, interspersed with frigid chunks of ice. These assaults weren't just flung by the sun. Most came from other massive stars in the solar system, desperately seeking their place in the cosmic order. One day, a rock struck you like a fatal blow, knocking you down, but you stubbornly endured, becoming a member of the solar system's rocky planets, joining Mercury and Venus, and Mars as your companions. After countless days of being battered by cosmic bricks, you finally adapted to this seemingly tranquil life. But fate loves to throw surprises. An asteroid named Theia crashed into you with lightning speed. It sought to unravel your existence, but you narrowly escaped death. Theia, however, was obliterated. Yet this disaster turned you into a molten, glowing bubble in space, tumbling through the cosmos. Planetary debris floated around you, the violent impact tearing your insides apart. Your surface melted, a chaotic blend like oil and water. You began restructuring from the inside out. The densest materials sank to your core, while the lightest rose to the surface. This earth-shattering collision tilted you permanently to one side, laying the foundation for the seasons to come. Meanwhile, iron and nickel clashed within you, settling to form a solid core. This core set you apart from other planets, granting you a unique power, a magnetic field. Theia's sacrifice transformed you into a cosmic superhero, though, to be fair, it was more like an attempted murder. From then on, you set a grand ambition, to carve your place in the solar system and become its most remarkable planet. To achieve this, you faced even hand. You have many business for storms, man, and Earth.
As for lighter gases, they were special deliveries from the sun, which periodically swept away your hard-earned atmosphere. This left you both furious and helpless. At the same time, the rocky fragments orbiting you began to coalesce, forming your companion, the Moon. At this point, it was just a molten ball of magma, as fiery as you were at birth. Finally, life began to settle into a rhythm, but the calm was short-lived. You were surrounded by countless asteroids, colliding with one another, plunging you into the late heavy bombardment phase. As a fragile rocky sphere, you were pockmarked with craters, not a trace of smoothness left. You were like a battle-scarred veteran. But don't worry, wounds heal with time. Over the next 100 million years, you endured relentless blows, your scars constantly reshaped. At last, the bombardment subsided, and you grew tougher. By now, the Moon had cooled, though it still lacked personality, forever orbiting you in lockstep. It never turned its face away, perhaps afraid its flaws would scare you. Meanwhile, your crust began to form, shaping your true appearance. This gave rise to the first oceans. All of this was thanks to your ingenuity and the aid of comets. You sparked the first embers of life. You felt free and unburdened, focusing on how to stand out in the solar system as a one-of-a-kind planet. After nearly 1 billion years of forging, you learned to grow from failure. Volcanic eruptions not only shaped your environment, but helped you build your first magnetic field, shielding you from the sun's atmospheric theft. Time raced by. 2 billion years later, your core split into solid and liquid layers, a metallic foundation that vastly strengthened your magnetic shield. This invisible barrier provided safety for emerging life forms, and painted dazzling auroras at your poles. But to become the solar system's greatest planet, you had to keep pushing. Luckily, you were perfectly placed in the habitable zone, keeping your water liquid, unlike Pluto's frozen wasteland. Remember those ancient microbes from your tranquil early days? They evolved, becoming cyanobacteria that invented photosynthesis, pumping oxygen into your atmosphere. Sadly, this oxygen was poison to most life back then, a toxic disaster. Countless creatures faced extinction. 99% of life vanished in an instant. The moon, that sly companion, mocked you from the sidelines. But this was just the prelude. Oxygen's buildup triggered atmospheric reactions, nearly frozen solid, like a giant ice cube. Welcome to your first global ice age. For the next 300 million years, you endured this icy baptism. At last, the ice began to thaw, ushering in an exhilarating new era. Your crust fractured, forming massive tectonic plates. These plates, like giant puzzle pieces, slid and collided across your surface, sometimes diving into ocean depths. Picture yourself playing an ultra-complex role-playing game, with each plate crafting a unique identity. Some were fiery and passionate, others cold as ice, and some bore wild volcanic veins. Future supercontinents would emerge one by one, leaving you questioning your very identity. When you looked in the mirror, you never knew which face you'd see next. This identity crisis wasn't something just anyone could handle. The good times didn't last. A wave of turmoil followed. Mountains roared into existence, volcanoes spewed molten fury, and earthquakes rumbled endlessly. It was as if you'd caught a geological flu, stuck in a feverish coughing fit. Don't underestimate this affliction. It was the silent force behind life's proliferation. Volcanic gases adjusted your atmosphere, while tectonic shifts stabilized the climate, allowing ecosystems to flourish steadily. In other words, your pain became the bedrock of thriving life. At this moment, those nearly extinct ancient bacteria staged a comeback, right then and there. They grew craftier and more complex, spreading rapidly, infiltrating every inch of your body. They multiplied swiftly, covering every corner of your surface. Over the next 1.5 billion years, life rode a roller coaster of highs and lows. You were frozen into an icy popsicle, then thawed, enduring 3 cycles of bitter cold and searing heat. During this time, you gave birth to a supercontinent, Pannotia. Sadly, this supercontinent didn't bring the peace you'd hoped for, instead plunging you into greater chaos. You realized this chaos couldn't continue. It was time to act, to change the course of events. But you had to move fast, before those reckless bacteria wore you down. As time passed, those once tiny bacteria began evolving into multicellular organisms with bizarre shapes and forms. They grew hard shells, sprouted agile eyes and nimble legs. The Cambrian explosion was Then the Devonian extinction struck harder, erasing 70% of species, partly due to trees disrupting the atmosphere. Trees greedily absorbed carbon dioxide, cooling you down. Just when you thought life would fade forever, a new supercontinent, Pangaea, burst into existence, sparking a revival of life. At this critical moment, you launched the Permian extinction known as the Great Dying. Spanning millions of years, 83% of life vanished from your stage. Fish and volcanoes bore witness to this brutal struggle. Then came the Triassic extinction, with volcanic eruptions, global warming, and ocean acidification taking turns. They nearly cleared the stage. Sadly, dinosaurs and pseudosuchians clung to life, becoming the stars of the new era. Finally,
the Cretaceous extinction began. You called on Jupiter, the solar system's big brother, who generously delivered a massive asteroid. It ignited in an instant, darkening the skies. Oceans turned to acidic rain. This nearly wiped out all your passengers. If that wasn't a thorough cleanup, you didn't know what the future held. But the good news? Times changed. Dinosaurs vanished, and mammals rose to prominence. They were relatively well-behaved, not as bothersome as trillions of bacteria, nor as headache-inducing as dinosaurs. Perhaps this was the turning point. You no longer obsessed over being the greatest planet, feeling utterly exhausted. You chose to slumber for 65 million years. As you finally savored rare peace, contemplating your future path, a species called humans emerged from Africa, spreading rapidly. They built cities, invented microwaves and cargo pants, drastically altering your rhythm of life. Meanwhile, they began digging into your crust, burning the fossils of ancient life, igniting a global industrial revolution. Your atmosphere faced a grave threat, choking as if gripped by asthma. They swarmed like locusts, landing on other planets, piercing your protective layers. The greenhouse gases from their burning fueled your fever, your temperature soaring. Some even began blaming you, eyeing Venus, a once glorious planet, now a scorching inferno. This could be a preview of your future. Glaciers melted, climates spiraled, animals vanished. You finally understood. Life itself was the architect of its own fate. At least the early bacteria were restrained, not nearly as reckless. The good news? They'll eventually exit the stage. Perhaps in their final moments, they'll find the key to solving this mess. Sometimes you wonder, no matter how long they survive, are you forever bound to them? Before they abandon you, they'll drain every last resource. They'll build a vast empire across the solar system. You linger in silence until a billion years hence. As the sun's rays grow fiercer, you turn into a reddish-brown, scorching hot potato, swelteringly unbearable. In 5.5 billion years, the sun swells into a red giant, like a massive flamethrower, boiling away your remaining oceans, incinerating your atmosphere. Your surface is seared into glassy rock, and you lose all sensation. As the sun collapses into a white dwarf, you become an eternally cold, lifeless rock, devoid of life, devoid of grandeur, left only with coldness and sorrow. This is your legend. You are more than a planet. You are a living entity with a story, emotions, and indomitable will.